Hey guys, it's Kevin here for the season premiere of Hannibal, Season 3, Episode 1, Antipasto, and wow, this was a very different premiere than what I was expecting it to be. I knew that it was probably going to be different than the first two seasons, but I did not expect it to be this different, and I'm pretty sure that the rest of the season is not going to be like this. I'm going to tell you guys why. This episode, of course, only focused on Hannibal and Bedelia's storyline, which is understandable. I mean, they basically made us think that most of the cast is dead. I mean, we don't know the fate of Will is not in this episode, Jack isn't in this episode, Alana, the characters we love, they're not in the episode. Simply because we don't know the fate of them, so just knowing that I think really throws us off and actually works in a very cool way. It wasn't a bad different, it was a really good different. We needed to see how this all happened with Hannibal and Bedelia, why they're working together, what they actually are doing, why she's working with him, because who would have thought Bedelia out of all people? And this episode was also very different in the style. Like, there were some scenes that were in black and white, which I thought was really cool. But let's get into this episode because it was amazing. There's a lot to talk about, and it's going to be a great season, as usual. Definitely, it's going to be a great season. So right away, we see how, and all the, by the way, guys, the thumbnail I'm using for this episode is going to be completely different than the rest of the thumbnails I use. Because the main cast wasn't in this episode, I'm using this thumbnail because the rest of the cast wasn't in this episode. So we see that right away it's very different than the first two seasons. We see Hannibal's riding on a motorcycle, weaving him on traffic, and basically he's in Paris and he pulls up outside a building, pulls up his helmet, goes inside a fancy party, and a guy approaches Hannibal and he says he was Roman's TA at Cambridge and says he was insufferable and he says Roman's books are terrible too. And we don't know who Roman is. I'm like, who the fuck is Roman? Like, who's he talking about? And he says Roman keeps churning out horrible books, and they talk about dissecting works, and he says sometimes only dissection will do. And a sword then unclaps champagne, and he waits outside later and greets Roman. He puts on his motorcycle helmet, follows Roman's car as it leaves, and Roman's disturbed to see Hannibal waiting at his house, because obviously he knows, you can tell right away that he knows who Hannibal is, and he knows what Hannibal can do to him, and later, Hannibal pours some red wine. You can see this is a much darker Hannibal. I mean, we've seen Hannibal. We've seen very different sides of him. We've seen the fun side. We've seen, the dark side. We've seen the caring side. This is a very dark. This is the Hannibal that we pretty much know in Silence of the Lambs. I mean, we're really getting to that. He's very cannibalistic. He's very creepy. And Mads Mikkelsen has always done a great job, especially this episode. I think he's doing a very good job with Hannibal's transformation. So he pours some red wine, puts on some opera. He's cooking what looks like liver, and it's always creepy to see him cook. That's something I love about the show, is that they make him cooking things creepy, and it's really cool. So a woman comes into the flat and smiles. She sees Hannibal sitting at the table eating. He greets her with a bonjour, because obviously he's in France right now. She looks shocked, and we see a flashback to Dr. Gideon telling Hannibal that he's the devil, and Hannibal says the devil has been a joke. Now, the flashbacks in this episode in black and white, those are all flashbacks. I think it was really cool that they did it in black and white because it's more like, okay, this differentiates a flashback and this is in color. And I think it was really cool the way they did that. Definitely, I don't think I've seen a TV show do that in a while, which I think was really cool. So Dr. Gain is telling Hannibal that he's the devil, and Hannibal says the devil has been a yoke on humanity for eons and he for much less. And I can kind of see where Gideon's coming from. But even though Hannibal did what he did, the only reason he did is because he was just sick of everyone. He was sick of people, being mad at him and everything, so he just wanted to reinvent himself. And you honestly do care for him, honestly. I think I kind of do understand why Hannibal did what he did. So Gideon asked about the now, of course, Gideon doesn't know what Hannibal did, but he's just saying that he is the devil. She asks about the seasonings that he used to cook his flesh, and Hannibal says everyone has their flavor, and Hannibal says it's only cannibalism if they're equals, but Gideon says him eating him makes it cannibalism. So we definitely see that Hannibal's starting to do this. He's starting to get turned to a cannibal, and Gideon says he should still have the fight or flight sensation, and Gideon says this all feels posthumous, and Hannibal says he's not dead yet and has to eat, but Gideon says there's nothing he has to do, and now we see people dancing at a feat. So Hannibal twirls Bedelia around him on the other dancers, and he dips her at the end and says it was perfect, and he offers her champagne, and then some others show up to congratulate Dr. Fell and his lovely wife, aka Hannibal and Bedelia. So they're pretending to be married, and of course they have to change their names, of course, because if someone finds out it's Hannibal, things could end up really bad for him. They're now working in this museum, and one skeptic asks if Hannibal would know if he held a note from Dante in his hand, and Bedelia asks him to dance to stop the tension, but Hannibal speaks in flawless Italian and quotes Dante's first sonnet, which I thought was really interesting. Because, of course, Bedelia didn't know if he knew Italian, but he knew Italian, which I thought was really interesting. How he knew Italian, I don't know, but, he's Hannibal. He's Hannibal. He knows what he's doing. So the man says to let Hannibal lecture to prove himself, and Hannibal says he's happy to sing for his supper, then offers a tight smile while the other intellectual snobs applaud him. And later, Hannibal tells Bedelia that they are among wonders of ancient Florence, and he says he killed hardly anyone during their stay. And she reminds him he removed a curator at the. You can see that Hannibal is trying to get better. Definitely, he's trying to get better. He's trying to get better. He's trying to not kill as many people, and of course, she was his therapist, but she told him that she can't work with him anymore. And she says he has aesthetical concerns, not ethical ones. And she says he seems more interested in making appearances than keeping them, which is true. Obviously, he wants to change his appearance rather than keep who he really is and not be someone he's not. So she asks for her help with her dress, and he unzips her. She goes to run a bath. She asks if he's given thought to eating Lidio, and he says it won't keep the peace, and she says he has no morality. And Hannibal says there is no morality in the world. And I kind of see what he means by that. I mean, think of what happened to Hannibal. One second everyone's with him, next second everyone's against him. I get what he's saying. So she says she feels like she's in control of her actions and given his history. It's a good day. She slides off her dress. He walks away. She soaks in the tub, her eyes open. She watches a drop in the faucet, and it seems eternally slow. She sinks beneath the water. She seems to drop endlessly, releasing bubbles, and sits up with a gasp out of the water, and she's still alive. So I thought that was really interesting that we saw that. Um, I'm pretty sure the reason that we saw this is because I think Bedelia is just really confused. She's kind of like, what should I stay here? What should I do here? Because I mean, obviously Bedelia would have never thought she'd work with Hannibal, and I just don't know if Bedelia thinks it's the right thing to do. So I think Bedelia is really confused right now, which I think is really interesting. And also something I heard is that Bedelia could become as dark as Hannibal, which is definitely something I don't think Bedelia wants to happen, and I think she knows that. So we see a flashback of Bedelia telling Jack that Hannibal is in control, and if he thinks he's close to catching him, he's fooling himself. So I thought that was really interesting. We saw that. So because Bedelia now, she knows how Hannibal is and his actions, things like that. So we see Bedelia looking for booze. She pours a large helping, and she hears water, and Hannibal was washing blood off of himself. He drives off and hears a gun cocking, and she holds a gun on him, and he asks if he can get dressed, and she asks what he's done. And I thought this was now, of course, she doesn't know about all the people he's killed. She doesn't know what he did. She doesn't know that he, what did we did to Jack. She doesn't know what he did to Will. So she knows that there's something going on here, and I love that we saw. I thought this was so well done. Whoever plays Bedelia, I don't know her name, but was amazing in the scene. She asks how it feels being really seen, and he says she ended their doctor-patient relationship, and she says she lacked the skills to continue his therapy, and Hannibal says he never found her lacking. She says she didn't provide him a substitute, and she asks if Will is still alive. And of course, he says Will was not a suitable substitute for her therapy, and she asks what he was, and he asks if he is professional courtesy, and she says almost entirely. He asks if she trusts him, and she says not entirely. He asks if she's considered what he might think of her motivations, and he says human motivations can be little more than greed. And of course, he doesn't really answer the question if Will is still alive or not. So she says greed and blind optimism. He says her optimism won't kill him, and she lays the gun down on the bed and takes a sip of her drink. She obviously can tell that this is not going to work. She's not going to put an end to him. It's not going to work. She's going to have to deal with him. So she smiles a little smile, and I think that she's just trying to enjoy herself. I know that you can tell that she's not happy. You can tell that she doesn't want to be with him, but I definitely feel like as time goes on, she's probably going to start to enjoy what she's doing. So now in Venice, she walks in the streets and goes to a shop. It's an upscale food shop. She orders some items and wine. She takes her items and goes. And Hannibal studies some anatomical diagrams in a museum. He comes downstairs later and leaves. The bells are tolling. It's a guy from the party in Paris. He says he never forgets a face, and Hannibal says his name is Anthony. And he asks if Hannibal's working with Roman, and he says he just missed Roman, and Anthony says he was hoping to chat with him. And Hannibal says he and his wife would love to have him for dinner if he's free. Now, when he said them, like, oh shit, when he said that, he means cannibal, right? Because obviously, that's a famous line from Silence of the Lambs. That's what I was thinking of, at least. So we go to flashback to Gideon telling watching Hannibal tending to his snail garden. He says he's kept Cocho garden since he was a young man. Hannibal talks about how foods affect the flavor of the meat, and Gideon asks when he's not eating himself, must he eat oysters and acorns so he can taste better? And Hannibal says he is tasty, and Gideon says since Hannibal ate him, imagine what he must taste like. So Gideon says it won't be long before someone takes a bite out of him, and Hannibal says dying hasn't dimmed Gideon a bit, and Gideon says the snails have no idea they're going to be eaten, but now they do. So I thought that was kind of an interesting scene because again, it's showing that he's just telling him, this is not going to get you anywhere. So Hannibal's in preparing oysters in present time, which I think is really cool. Bedelia tries one. Anthony's there, and she asks him how well he knows Roman, and he says not well. And Anthony gossips about people, and Anthony says, excuse me, Antony, that's his name. Antony says Roman is annoying and talks about how Roman liked to provoke fear. And Hannibal asks if Antony's traveling alone. He says he is, and Hannibal invites him to come hear Roman speak on Friday. And basically, Antony asks Bedelia if she's avoiding meat, and she says she's trying to avoid anything with a central nervous system. So you can definitely tell that she's trying to not be like Hannibal. Definitely, you can tell she's trying to not do that. So Antony notes he's being served oysters, acorns, and snails, and says that's what the Romans used to make meat taste better. And Bedelia says her husband's very particular how she tastes. Of course, again, they have to pretend to be husband and wife, and Antony asks if that's kind of party, and Hannibal says it's not, and Bedelia says it really isn't, and again, they just have to go along with it. Bedelia, I think, is just really just, she's pretty much like, what the fuck do I say here? I mean, really, she's in like the most awkward position right now, and Antony says it's a shame, and they're both suddenly so fascinating. He leaves, and Bedelia asks Hannibal why he let him go. He asks what she'd have him do, and she's off kilter. Now, you can definitely tell that Antony's suspicious. He's suspicious of who they are, he's suspicious of what they're doing, and I thought that was really interesting. Now, as we know, when someone finds out what happens, Hannibal's going to kill him. I knew Antony was going to die because let's think of what happened with Beverly. Beverly knew what Hannibal was doing, so that's why he had to kill her. So Bedelia walks to a gourmet shop again. She orders the wine and sees a hair hanging and a drop of blood drip from its mouth. She takes her wine, goes looking stressed out. She sits on a bench at the train station. Security cameras watch her. She looks at the security camera deliberately. And before Bedelia lies gasping, looks at a body near her. She sits up and sees blood in her hand. She pulls something out of the man's mouth and then collapses. So Hannibal's there and she says he attacked her and he asks if it's her blood and she says no, and we realize that she killed this person. He says it wasn't reckless violence, it was a controlled use of force, and my worry, you can definitely tell that Bedelia is very worried that she's going to become like Hannibal here, and she doesn't want that to happen. So Bedelia says she knows what happened, and he asks if she does. She says he was Hannibal's patient before he was hers, and Hannibal says she was not defending herself, and he died under her care. So she washes the blood from her hands. He says he can help her tell the version of events she wants told, and he cleans blood from her face and says he can help her. He can help if she will ask him to, because obviously she's making it seem like it was just self-defense, but it wasn't. She killed him, and she's not accepting that, and he wants to help her. So I kind of see this going. Maybe Hannibal is going to give Bedelia therapy, which I think is really interesting. I think that's what's going to happen, possibly. So Hannibal lectures at the museum on Dante's Hell. He lectures on Lucifer, and he stands in the shadow of the screen in a way that makes him look like the devil. And he talks about themes of betrayal and hanging as punishment. And Hannibal shows an early inscription of the crucifixion, and Judas hanged and disemboweled. And he talks about betrayal, hanging, self-destruction. He welcomes Antony, and Bedelia runs out of the lecture hall as Hannibal gets thunderous applause. And I thought that was really interesting. So Sargilito approaches and Hannibal asks if he's earned his position, and Sargilito says it was passable, and then Antony says he was Fell's, aka Hannibal's, TA at Cambridge. So he lies to the man, and the others walk away, and Antony smiles at him warmly. They walk through the hall of torture instruments. Antony says he's interested in Fell's wickedness and says he has no delusions about morality, and wonders what fate befell Dr. Fell to see him there in his place, because obviously he doesn't really know why he's there. So Hannibal says he must have him to strap him to the wheel to break him, and Tony says he must have found Roman as distasteful as he did, and Hannibal says on the contrary. Hannibal asks if he's there to twist him, but Antony says he's there to help him untwist to their mutual benefit. Bedelia's ready to walk out when the door opens. It's Hannibal and Antony. He closed the door. She's stuck with no way out. We see Hannibal hit Antony in the head with a small bus, knocks him to the floor. Hannibal asks Bedelia if she's observing this or participating. She says she's observing, but Hannibal says this is participation since she knew what he would do, which, yeah, she would. She did really know what he was going to do. So he asked her to answer honestly. And again, she just doesn't want to admit that she's very much becoming like Hannibal, and she doesn't want to admit that. So she said she was curious what would happen. He asked her if she was curious what Antony would do and what he would do in response. He asked her if she considered their thoughts and actions, and asked if this is what she expects. She says yes, and he says that's participation. So Antony's struggling, gasping, when Hannibal walks over, snaps his neck, and Bedelia gasps. She had no idea he would do that, and he's asking what has she gotten herself into. He asks if she should hang up her coat, and she's in shock, and he helps her pull off her coat. He helps her pull her coat off, and I really don't know what they're gonna do about this. I mean, honestly, what are they gonna do about Antony? I mean, they really have some problems there. So Hannibal's on a train. He thinks about oysters and cooking. He served Gideon the oysters, then sat to eat as well. And then we see Gideon now has neither leg because Hannibal ate both of them. So Gideon taps the silverware on the plate, and Hannibal asks if he'd rather extend him the same courtesy as the snails and not knowing they're being eaten. And Gideon says he knows he wants company while he's eating, but wishes it was Will Graham there. Which, again, he definitely is wondering why isn't Will Graham here. So Gideon drops a utensil and says he's fascinated to know how Hannibal will feel when all this happens to him. And he definitely is warning him, saying, this isn't the right road to go down. And Hannibal looks out the window thinking about life, and I think he's just thinking about it. Do I like the man I'm becoming? Do I want to change myself? Should I just stay the way I am? Is this good what's happening to me? And he looks at the sketch of the Vitruvian man. He folds into a little shape. We see Antoni's body, skinless torso on display in the lecture hall, and that's how the episode ends. So again, a very different episode. The reason I didn't talk a lot about this episode is there wasn't a lot that happened, but there was a lot that happened. I really want to talk about Bedelia. Bedelia, in my opinion, I definitely feel is becoming like Hannibal, but she doesn't really want to admit that she's becoming like Hannibal. Notice every time that, Hannibal tried to tell her, oh, you killed this person, she's like, no, 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 she tried to defend herself. So I definitely feel like she is just worried that she's becoming like Hannibal, which I definitely feel that's going to happen. Now, again, she doesn't know that Will and Jack and Alana, she doesn't know what Hannibal did to them, obviously. So how is she going to react to this? I'm not really sure. I'm interested in seeing what her reaction to that's going to be. That's going to be very interesting to see. We did see a promo where we did see all of them alive, so we know that they're all going to be alive, but we don't know how they're alive, which I think is really interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing how next week's episode is going to be. I know it's going to be amazing. Hannibal, I definitely feel like is trying to figure out, should I be a killer or not? Do I really like the road I'm going down? I think that really is what he is questioning at this point. Because, I mean, think about what he's trying to do. There are points where he's killing people, then there are points where he's not. Then, him staring at the window, I think is just him questioning if he likes the direction his life is heading. So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there as well. Antoni, I don't know what they're going to do about this. I don't know how they're going to how they're going to be able to cover up Antoni's death. That's going to be very interesting to see how they do cover this up. That's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening there. Because I really don't know what they're going to do about this. I guess we'll have to see. Gideon, I thought was really interesting to see as well. I definitely really enjoyed that. And also, Bedelia at some point, she's going to get suspicious. Also, does Bedelia really want to be doing this with Hannibal? Doesn't seem really seem like she wants this. Obviously, I don't really think she wants this. And you're not really sure if she's working with him or if she's working against him. A part of me feels like she's working with him now, but eventually she's going to turn against him. That's really what I think. I think that she's going to work with him till, she's got him on her side, and then she's going to turn against him. That's really what I think Bedelia is doing. However, there could be that thing where she does end up becoming like Hannibal, which there very well could happen. But Mads Mikkelsen and Gillian Anderson, some of the best acting I think they've had on the entire show. They work great in this episode. And again, not a lot to say about this episode just because there wasn't a lot happening. It was more of just a transition episode. And honestly, this episode worked very well, as if you've never seen a single episode of Hannibal, watch this episode. I love the way the episode was shot in black and white. I love the way the flashbacks were in black and white. I thought that was really cool. Definitely very well done stuff there. Very creepy episode as usual. Amazing episode. This is going to be another amazing season. And I'm definitely interested in seeing, what's going to happen with Will and Jack and Alana. How are they all going to be alive? What's going to happen with them? Are they going to find where Hannibal is? I mean, I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And also, how long are they going to be on the show? Obviously, we know that Jack got stabbed very severely, so I feel like Jack's going to die. Alana's going to die. What's really going to happen there? That's something I'm definitely very interested in seeing what's going to happen. Especially Will. Seeing Will get his revenge on Hannibal. We saw an awesome promo next week for that. I can't wait for the next episode. It's going to be awesome. But that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw of this episode. Overall, an amazing premiere. Overall, even though it was very different from the rest of the show, it still was amazing. And that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Also, how long will they be able to keep up this act of being this married couple? Will they be able to keep it up? I'm not really sure if they will. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review of Daredevil. And I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.